All right, so I was at the Home 2 Suites in Cookeville, Tennessee, and I went down. The doctor had told me I needed to swim more for stress, and so I'd gone down. I thought the pool closed at 10. It was 9. I usually go at the last hour to go because no one's in there, so it's so much easier to just be by yourself and not be bothered. And I went there, and it was closed, and so I went to the front desk, and I said, hey, is the pool closed? Which was the dumbest thing that you could say. Is, no, we just lock it at 9 p.m. for fun. And he said, yes, it's 9 p.m. here. And I said, well, my doctor's asked me to swim because of stress and do more of that. And so is there any way I could get into the pool? And they said, yeah, that'd be fine. I said, I won't be in there long. I only need 20 minutes. And there was the 2 workers. One was behind the desk. One was over at the little sweet shop that they have, and he's pricing stuff. Well, that guy comes over to me and price tags me with the price gun. It was the most awkward thing. And I looked at him after he did it like, why? Why would you do that? And then I looked at how much I'm worth. I'm worth $2.
$2.
And some of these places at the sweet shops, you go and you'll look and you'll think, maybe I'll get a bag of chips or something. And then you look at the price and it's like $5. And it's like, no, thank you. I won't do that.
Talk to me right out of it.
I'm not even worth the best bag of chips they have.
I don't think there's anything on most of their shelf that's $2, dude.
There's a lot of things on their shelves that are $2 apparently, and I'm one of them.
Only you. Really.
That's right, only me. And so he did that, and I was like, thank you. And then he was like, have a nice swim. And he said it kind of weird. So I was like, I might not want to swim anymore. And so after
I'll be watching.
Yeah. Well, and I was in the pool and I looked up, there's a camera, and I thought, So I got out of the pool and I left, and I had to walk by them to leave. And the guy says, are you done so soon? I said, absolutely, I am. I'm going back to my
paranoid.
room.
I couldn't swim.
I can't do it. And so that's one of the random things that happened to me. But that's not the only time somebody creepy has kind of interacted with me. I went to a place, and because I travel so much and do all these different trips, there have been a few times where you're packing in such a hurry and the trips have run together. And so this particular occasion, I had been gone for 2 weeks and I was home for 2 days, and I was having to leave again. And I apparently forgot to pack boxers, which is a problem, That is a problem. And so I thought, well, I'll go, and I've got to go buy some boxers now. And so I went to the store, and I'm holding, because I was going to be gone 10 days. So I had to buy a lot. And so I'm holding a lot of boxers in my arms. And there's this guy standing off to the side, smiling at me very creepily. And he won't stop looking at me. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me. And I had my AirPod in. And so I told my phone to call my wife, and I said, do not hang up. There's this guy. He will not stop staring at me, and he's blocking the exit for me.
My. And
I'm in a strange area. He's definitely in my way. I can't just walk past him. And then I walked over to another part of the store, and he'd reposition himself. And then I look at him at one point, and he looks at me smiling, and he goes, and I was just like, hello, how are you today? And so finally they left, and I went and I checked out, and I'm walking out, and I noticed as I walked out, I had parked over on the far left side of the mall that I was at. They were standing there. And so I thought, I could use the steps anyway. And so I walked to the far right of the mall, exited, and then walked all the way around the outside entrance of the mall to get in my truck, all while I'm on the phone with Megan, because I thought for sure this guy's following me. And then I had a dream that I woke up and he was just sitting at my desk in the hotel room. How are you? I found you.
He's waving
at you, And so there's been some weird things that have happened to me while out on the road. And you've traveled and done things. Have you ever had anything weird happen to you while you were out and about?
Yeah, I was thinking, that guy may have recognized you.
I hope not. The way he was looking at me, I don't know what he recognized me from. But
I have, I've had some weird things happen to me, and some people, be a little bit creepy, and sometimes people will come up to me and they'll say, "Hey, I know you," and they may use my name or something like that. I'll always, just introduce myself like like, hey, let's have a real introduction.
Right.
And then they'll look at me like, why are you introducing yourself? And then I'll just say to them, I'll say, what's your name? And sometimes they don't want to tell me. And I'm like, that's really off-putting that you know my name and you feel comfortable to come up to me and act like we know each other, but then you don't want me to know your name. And, what's in a name? Well, sometimes it's a lot.
Should I be on the defense or not?
That's right.
Now? Yeah,
that's
it's all in your name right now.
Well, and PTP has this happen a lot too. There were several years ago, maybe 10 or 12 now, I was at PTP and I had the name tag on. And my dad, travels a lot, has preached in a lot of different places. I was privileged to travel with him a lot growing up. And so I've met a lot of people in my lifetime, as I know you have too, traveling and doing things. I know you've done the same thing. And the problem is I'm one person for them to remember. And anytime I travel to a congregation, there's at least 30 or more that I have to try to remember. And my brain does not do very well in that department.
Either. Yeah.
And so the name tags at PTP, I've always teased that, like, that's the one thing I don't like, is because people can come up and they then recognize, oh, yeah, you came with your dad 10 years ago on a blue Sunday afternoon and you were there. Do you remember that? And I'm thinking, I don't. I'm sorry. And then you feel awkward because, as luck always seems to have it for me, their name tag is missing.
Yeah.
And mine's on display and I'm trying to look at their name tag. And you know how you have to do you quickly look, just trying not to show them that you're not remembering who they are. And so PTP can be brutal in that way for me. And I'm sure for so many others, because they walk up to you and they know who you are or they've seen you before.
I'll tell you one of my deepest scars from being a young preacher. I'm still in college. I'm working as a youth minister at a small congregation out in the country. It's good, strong congregation, good elders, good preacher. But one Sunday they have me do announcements. And so I'm up there, I'm doing the announcements and I read who's leading the opening prayer, who's presiding over the Lord's table. And then I say, and the song leader, and I blanked. I mean, I could not. And I just put my head down, just trying to think of it, just rifling through names and now starting to panic and petrified. Finally, somebody just said it. And then I repeated it. That's still one of my most embarrassing moments in front of the congregation. It's probably not my most, but one of them. But I struggle with people's names. And in my congregation where I've preached for a long time, people know he's bad. Yeah. I've called people by the wrong name at church. And I'm embarrassed by it every time, but I do it anyway.
Well, in your profession as a lawyer, you see names constantly, I'm sure, different names on different dockets and different things. You read lots of case law, I'm sure, and different things, and you see so many this versus this. And I can imagine why it would be hard to remember some names after a certain point.
It's probably a good point. I probably have been trained to tune them out.
Right.
Because like when I'm talking to other people in my office about cases, they'll tell me the name of the client and it means, and I hate to admit this, but I don't frequently know the cases by their names. But if they tell me the facts of the case, if they say this person was injured at such and such place in such and such way, then the whole case just comes into my mind.
Right.
But you give me the name and it doesn't.
Well, and it's interesting, you point out the injury side of things. When we were trying to plan our summer content, I was talking to Wayne. I was like, who can we get? Who are we going to go and get? And then I was driving in to Dalton last month to record some TV programs, and I saw, got to get Gary. And I was like, that's who we're going to go get. There you go. They got to go get Gary. And I was like, I know him. That's really cool. How many of those billboards do you have up in the area?
Well, they're different sizes. We have about 6 of the big ones, and then we have the smaller ones on a quicker rotation, so they only stay up for 30 days, where the big ones stay up for up to a year.
Yeah.
And so we have up to 10 of the smaller ones.
Nice.
So
it was neat to see someone
pretty good blanket around.
Yeah, it was neat seeing that. I know him. Yeah. And I'm glad we got you for this. I'm enjoying this.
I'm enjoying it too.
Yeah. So Wayne, you years ago slipped on some ice. And I don't know.
Yes.
I think we've told that before, but I want to prime this next story by letting Gary know we were FaceTiming or StreamYarding or something for a meeting with Chase, right?
Yeah.
And I've got 2 to say about Chase too after you tell the slip and slide story. Well, we're on the phone talking, and Wayne's trying to zoom in. He had been having some problems with something at the house he was dealing with. And so he was having to hurry, and it had snowed and iced pretty bad in his area of Maryville, Tennessee, where he was at the time. And so we're talking and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, Wayne, his camera has gone dark and it's been shut off. And when Wayne turns his camera back on, he's on the ground. And I won't find it. I have it. I won't do it to you.
We're not putting that video out.
No, I won't
do
it. I won't. I promise. But I do have it. And
I know you do.
if anybody wants to pay me for it, they are welcome.
If you would like to support,
Wayne made the mistake of sending the video to me, and then he tried to delete it. But I'm quick. I screen recorded like that, and so I've got a video of this happening. Wayne was walking. I'm amazed you didn't tear your ACL like that. You have some very strong legs for that to have not happened, because his leg went in a direction that God did not intend for it to go. And he fell and was hurt pretty bad for a couple of days after that.
Yeah.
But managed to get back up and didn't really have any major injury occur from that, other than just your ego might have been bruised a little bit, right?
Knowing I was on camera was the worst.
That's right.
Because the ring cameras on the front of the church building and the other cameras on the corners caught everything from just about every angle. It was pretty tremendous.
Yeah. So this is not the only time Wayne's ever fallen.
It won't be the last.
It won't be the last. That book that's over there on the shelf, Let's Be Brave, it says, anytime you fall, you get back up. I read that the other day to Wayne, and I said, maybe not you, though. You might not get back up. Tell him your slip and slide story.
All right. So a couple of summers ago, you know how summers go. There's a good fellowship get together, summer, maybe July 4th, I think it was. Get together, a barbecue at some brethren's house, and the whole church is there having a good old time. Well, in Maryville, Tennessee, there's a lot of hills, and these folks bought a piece of they made a slip and slide. It wasn't just the little yellow, small, short slip and slide for the kiddies. This was probably 30 feet wide and 150 feet long.
Oh, man.
I mean, this was a big one coming down a hill. It was a full thing. And they had put Dawn all over it, had water running on it, obviously. It was a good time. And we had been out there for an hour or so, and it was getting hot. And I wore a pair of shorts, and I'm like, and a couple of kids come over, and all I really had done was stand up and was walking over to where some other brethren were. I was kind of, every once in a while you move around, talk to someone else, and I just got up, but the kids were walking back up. They're like, Mr. Wayne's going to get on the slip and slide. I was like, why would he do that? I don't know. And about that time I said, if you will go to Steve Johnson and Tim Haven, because I'm going to call them out on the air, and you get them to go up to the top of the hill, I'll go too.
And you thought, and I thought, no chance.
No way these guys are going. I thought Steve might, but I thought Tim would have my back. No, Tim would not. Anyway, so we walked the treacherous hill to get up to the top. And anyway, there's kids all over this thing, all in the way and everything. So finally the kids start moving out of the way, and we think, okay, we're about to go. And actually Tim didn't go. He was coming up, but Steve's son was visiting, and he's probably 30, somewhere in there. And he decided he was going to run with us. And so we're all, it's an effort. All three of us, we're going to go at the same time. And it's wide enough. We got plenty of room. It should be good, 30
feet will fit.
It should be good. There's just three of us,
Famous
right?
last words on this earth.
And we take off at a run. We're getting it. And as much as an old man can run, as old men can run. And we were running pretty good. And right before that, one of the kids shot across the slip and slide, and it just took my focus off for just a moment. And about that time, I was gonna hit, and I was gonna just go for it. I wanted to take a step onto the slip and slide and then go, because that's kind of where the hill was. And I thought that'll be a softer landing. That'll be good. And the problem was that my foot caught the edge of the slip and slide because I wasn't paying attention now as the way I should have been. foot caught the slip and slide. I pulled 10 feet of slip and slide with me, dragging it, and then proceeded to fall in just an awful, awful way, and slid all the way, to the end. And I thought, oh, that was bad. And they said, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," and well, I got to do it again. I got to do better.
Why?
I have to do better.
Why would you tempt
Because that one was just so messed up,
So the next one's definitely better.
I can do better than that. And I did. And with that one, I proceeded to Superman in a most beautiful way and landed on it. And that's the one where I blew out my shoulder.
I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly what you're supposed to do is laugh at it.
But I went off the end of it 10 feet into the grass, past it. And there's a beautiful video of that one as well, of, trying to make your body stop when everything is saying, slide more. Gravity, Dawn dishwashing liquid, plenty of water, and it's all in the face and the eyes, and you're just like, just eating it all the way down, and then 10 feet of grass at the end of it. It was glorious. It was beautiful. And 6 months later,
you fell.
I'm having to explain to the doctor how I injured that shoulder.
Well, there was this really steep slip and slide.
Here, I'll show you.
Well, the funny thing is that I forgot. I'm in the I've traveled. We've gone out west on a trip, and I've come back, and I can't reach across. Even the car or whatever, this shoulder. And I'm like, I don't understand what I did, doc. Something's off, and he's checking it out. So we scheduled, did the MRI, did all that, and so finally I'm having to say, somebody reminded me, oh, that's when you went on the slip and slide. I'm like, really? That's when it happened.
Then you had your surgery,
and
right?
then I had to go back to the doctor and say, hey, I did do this. This is probably when it happened. I have to admit to you now the full story. And so it was a lot of embarrassment. And then, yes, a year later.
A year
and a half later was the ice.
Right. Well, you had your surgery, though, on that shoulder that you blew out, right? Because that's when I had to come and fill in for
fully
you,
on it.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I did not let you live that down.
No.
I'm a very good friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, there was a
good time
at camp. That's usually slip and slides are done at summer get-togethers and camps. And they had asked us all to bring something for the slip and slide. I had never done a slip and slide before. I had never put one together, never put one on. And so I thought that what you went to buy was baby oil. And so I went and bought not just a thing of it, like the biggest thing of baby oil that they sold. It was like this big. And I walk in and I hand it, and the person said, "Are you trying to murder these children?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" I didn't realize that evidently baby oil is not what you're looking for. It's a little too slick.
I'm thinking Chevy Chase, Christmas Vacation. Not for me, Clark.
He absolutely thought that I had intended to murder those children with this. And I said, "I thought that's what you asked." And he says, "No, it's like Dawn dish soap that you bring." And he said, "Even that can get out of hand." And then you told me that story a few months later. And I was like, yeah. So speaking of Chase, who was on that call.
Yeah.
Chase did this thing where he did the top 10 moments of his first 100 episodes, which is a cool thing to do. And yes, Chase, I'm going to put you on blast for this because I laughed so loud when this happened. I was in a hotel room listening to it, and I guarantee you the people next to me heard me laughing. He's going through this long process. He's got this person that he had on as a guest. He said this was one of the top 10 moments, and he didn't really clarify that the top 10 moments were based on like higher downloads. It sounded like he chose what the moments were. This is how he worded the number one moment. He says, "The number one moment from my podcast is me." I was laughing so hard.
Revelation.
It's like, I am the greatest there's ever been. He starts talking about, he says, "Listen to this clip of me." He hits play. And it's him talking, and it was a good clip, but I was dying laughing so hard because I thought, and if you know Chase, if you don't know Chase, I'll go ahead and tell us too. Chase is one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. He has no arrogant bone in his body, which is why it made it sound so much funnier that he's like, the number one moment is myself. I'm pretty electric. I am God's gift to podcasting. And so he had done that, and I laughed so hard at that. And I don't think I've ever talked to him about it. I was saving it.
Yeah.
And I hope he watches this and then calls me and says, really?
Yeah.
You're going to put me on blast like that?
Absolutely.
Well, don't worry. I'm going to put your son on blast now too. So we went to have a scattered abroad luncheon last year at the lectureship. And a lot of our hosts were speaking. We had a lot of people in town, and so we went to a Mexican restaurant. And there is a waitress that works there that anytime she's working there, we request her. She does a fantastic job. We get in and out. I don't have to speak to her if she's working. She knows what I want to drink, what I want to eat. And so we asked her to work our table. And we're sitting there, and there's this place in Pigeon Forge called Calhoun's. They're phenomenal for their ribs. Mm-hmm. They have great ribs. Right, Wayne?
Sure.
And I am like the rib salesman and spokesperson. If Calhoun's needs a commercial, if they hired me, I would do them justice. I would be I always say they're the best ribs. Well, we were talking about that, me and Chase was like, yeah, you're obsessed with eating ribs. Andrew, Chase's son, points to the waitress standing behind me and goes, let's eat her ribs. And she looked at him like, what? And Chase goes, why would you say that? He thought we were talking about human ribs that we were eating. And so he said, yeah, let's eat her ribs. And so that was an awkward day at the Mexican restaurant. And thankfully, it did not ruin our friendship with that waitress, and she takes good care of us even still. But Gary, what other stories kind of come to your mind that would fall in what we're talking about, or even something different?
Well, so many things happen in different ways over the years, but you think about awkward. But what I think about is what my family brings up to me over and over, and frankly, my wife, right? But when I was a young preacher, I was asked to fill in on a Sunday night in my home congregation, and so I'm scheduled to go and speak on Sunday night, and I need to have my wisdom teeth removed because they're causing me pain. They're starting to get swelling in my jaw. And so my dad says, well, we'll do it. We'll kill two birds with one stone. And so on Thursday afternoon, I go to the oral surgeon and have two wisdom. I only had two on the top, and he cuts, the wisdom teeth out. And that's a story in and of itself. Sure. Just going under anesthesia for the first time. I can remember. It's weird how vividly I remember it. But I'm pretty sick the next day. On Friday, I'm not feeling good at all. But on Saturday, I'm starting to feel better, taking the medicine, stuff like that. Saturday night, I eat some regular food, eat some meat, and feeling okay. And so go through Sunday. And so then Sunday, I'm ready to preach. I get up there and I'm preaching on Noah and deliver my sermon. Everything seems perfectly fine to me. And I get to the back of the building, and people start coming out, and my wife comes out, and she said, Gary, you called Noah Moses the entire time.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm on medication. The entire sermon. Yeah. I'm preaching Genesis 6, and I'm talking about the flood, but it's all Moses instead of Noah.
Moses was a just man.
That's right.
Righteous before the eyes of God.
And wrote it.
And he wrote it, yeah.
That's right. He did write it.
I accidentally got it twisted once and had Joseph with Bathsheba.
Oh, yeah?
Instead of Joseph saying no to Potiphar's wife, he'd gone out onto the rooftop apparently, and somehow he was still alive too. And he had changed his viewpoint on doing some wickedness. He was fine with it now, apparently. You mentioned your wisdom teeth removal. That's funny that you had that happen. I had to have mine removed too, all four of them. I had one that was impacted on this side, and I told the dentist that did my surgery, I said, I really struggle with going and dealing with this kind of stuff. So I said, if you can put me under, that would be great. And he said, well, I can't put you under anesthesia, but we'll give you some medication and we'll give you something that you'll be high as a kite. And I was like, normally that's something I try to avoid, as a Christian, but in this case, sure, for a surgery, I don't want to know where I'm at. And so I get there and they strap you down At least they did to me. Maybe they didn't do that for others. Other people were like, that guy might not have been a dentist. He's just operating on your mouth and giving his wisdom teeth, pulling those out. But he gives me the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I feel this sharp sensation of cold. And then he says, all right, you should feel lightheaded in 3, 2, 1. I didn't feel lightheaded at all. I just felt a little bit more like lighter, not like I don't know where I'm at. I felt everything.
Oh my goodness.
But couldn't say anything because they got your mouth propped open.
Right.
And so he would go, relax your shoulders, and then he'd be yanking and pulling, and I'm over here going
goodness.
like, and I can't tell him to stop. And I found out that because I've had to have so many different procedures with my Crohn's disease that I've had to be put under anesthesia for, I have more of a buildup to it. And so they have to give me a little bit more. And so had they given me a little bit extra, it would have worked. But because they didn't do that, I felt the entire thing basically. And the only thing that saved me from all the pain was they numb your mouth so that you don't feel the drilling and all that kind of stuff. But that was a brutal experience. But back then, this dentist, surgeon, oral surgeon, whatever his title is, I never know that stuff. He did the teeth removal for free because I was a preacher. Oh. He said, hey, I like to give back to preachers, and I want to be able to give back in this way. So how do you say that you're upset with a guy
who didn't charge you to rip
saved
teeth
you
out of your mouth?
$2,000? You know, the only thing he legally could not give me for free were the pain medication that I had to take afterwards. I had to pay for that. But he told me, he said, you know, I'll cover the cost of your teeth removal. It was like a $2,000 surgery that I didn't have to pay for. And so the entire time I think I can't complain. Yeah. Because if I complain, he may be like, all right, well, that's $2,000 in. And then what? And so it was a nice thing. But when I went for the consultation, he didn't ask what I did. And that's what I was told by the guy that it was Randy Collum that had told me, go to this guy, he'll take care of you. And he didn't ask me what I did for a living or what I was doing. And so we go through the whole process. And I said, Randy Collum sent me to you. And his wife, Amy, said you did great work. And I was hoping that would like prime the well a little bit and help him realize who I was. He didn't remember them. I guess you and him would get along in that regard. And so he didn't remember who they were. And we get through the end of it, and he says, okay, the total cost of the surgery is going to be $2,000. And I was like, And then you get into that mode. How do you ask for free surgery without it sounding greedy? And so I'm sitting there going, how do I tell him I'm a preaching student and a preacher? And so I thought, oh, okay, here's what I'll try. And I said, hey, could you give me a note for when I go back to preaching school that I can give to them and let them know that I was here today and it'll excuse my absence? And he stopped writing and he looked up at me and he said, you're a preacher? I said, yes. And he crumpled up the paper, threw it in the trash, said, that changes everything.
Oh, wow.
And he said, here's what we're going to do. And so he described it. So a couple years later, I had another problem come up where I had to have possibly more oral surgery done. And I thought, well, I'll go to that guy because I know he'll take care of me at least. And maybe it won't cost me as much. And I called and I said, he retired. And then it's again, you want to be like, and does the new guy have the same policy that it's free? As if he does, I'll gladly come see him too. But wisdom teeth removal is no joke. And I ended up with dry socket in that impacted one. I didn't do anything that I thought was wrong. At least I thought I'd done everything right. But it was 4:30 in the morning, Saturday morning. So none of the places are open. And it was the worst pain I had felt up until that point in my life. And it was just throbbing. And they give you the medication that you can take, but it barely numbed anything. And so that was pretty rough. And then when you go in and they treat dry socket, you ever had dry socket? Did you have dry socket?
I had an infection. I don't think I had a dry socket.
That stuff tastes so bad that they have to put in your mouth and in where the hole is to try to heal it. And it is so nasty. And the whole side of your mouth tastes like that for the rest of the day. Did it happen to you that way?
I was in boot camp when I got mine taken out. And so I was just going to ask if the guy who was, didn't charge you to take your teeth out,
right?
If he stood on your chest when he did it.
It felt like he did.
Is that what they did for you, Wayne?
I woke up in the middle of it.
Oh my goodness!
I was out. And
did you even know that they were doing it?
And woke up. I just kept feeling pressure, and I'm like, maybe they're waking me up. Because sometimes they'll, do that on your chest. Kind of.
I've never
this
had that
guy's
happen to
knee
me.
is in my chest, and he's over me. With looks like a pair of pliers to me. Just come on out there. And wasn't great, man.
No.
And so, yeah, I thought the whole time, because I'd heard several guys who were having their wisdom teeth cut out in boot camp. They got like 3 days off and had ice cream. I thought, this is going to be great.
Perfect strategy.
It was not. It was not good at all. And so, yeah,
So
that was the worst week.
did you ever ask why they had to use that method? That would be like one of my first
I
questions.
I couldn't find the guy. I mean, so then I finally, I passed back out somewhere in the process, and but I woke up, man, I had a bruise on my chest,
Yeah.
And I was trying to tell my CO, company commander, hey, I've got this, he had his knee. I woke up in the middle. He said, nah, never happened. They just blew it off. Moved on.
I tell you,
More push-ups. Move along.
You can't prove it.
it's so weird because there was a nurse, right, and she had put an IV in the pit of my elbow, and she's putting in a syringe into the IV, and she says, "Okay, I want you to count backwards from 10." And I said, 10, 9, 8. That stuff works. And I wake up thinking, fast, doesn't it? And I couldn't say it. There's people over me and my mouth is like swollen up. But I have these words, like I need to finish my sentence.
Yeah.
And then finally I got to where I could talk and I was like, did I pass out? And they were like, yeah, you had an entire surgery. I got to 8 and I
4.
was done.
Start counting. I didn't even finish counting, man.
I remember the first time I ever had anesthesia. I was so exhausted from the process because with Crohn's disease, they make you have a lot of colonoscopies. I've had 14.
Oh, wow.
So much fun. And the very first one I had, you're so exhausted from the process of prepping and getting ready for that I just laid my head down immediately and went to sleep. But then the second time I was like, I want to see how long I can stay awake. It's the dumbest. I don't know why, but in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to show them, that I know what I'm doing. And so they said, all right, we'll count back from 10. And I opened my eyes as wide as possible. And I'm counting back from 10. And I was like, 8. Just immediately. And so then there was one time, I've told this on the podcast before, but there was one time where I had apparently subconsciously was shaking myself awake. And they were having to give me enough anesthesia that would have tranquilized a horse. And they came in and they, Mr. Clark, are you okay? Yeah, I just feel really heavy right now. And they're like, yeah, you got to stay here and sleep for a few hours because you woke up 3 times during the procedure. And I didn't remember it, probably because of all the anesthesia they gave me. But anesthesia is no joke. I mean, it makes you do some crazy things or say and think some crazy things. Man. And I've got that problem where I'm a little bit less reserved on anesthesia. And so there have been some funny things that have happened, but I'll tell this that happened recently and my wife's made fun of me for it, but I was in the hospital in December. I had an abscess. And so they had me on a lot of medication to try to take care of that, a lot of antibiotics and pain medication. It was very painful. And I had been there a few days and Megan said, hey, you should take a shower tonight and be able to kind of clean up, feel normal again. Well, when you got an IV on and you have to shower, you have to wrap the whole arm, encase it so that it doesn't have anything happen to it. You got all this stuff going on. It's like such a chore to clean up. And you have no arm that works on this one side where the IV is. And so you're trying to do the best you can with just one arm. And so then she says, hey, let's walk around the floor for a little bit. And I'm like, okay, let's walk around for the floor a little bit. That's fine. And by the time we had done all that, I was exhausted. And they came in and gave me my medicine. And I looked at my wife and I said, honey, I've got to go sleep. I'm just so tired. Well, I woke up and thought Megan was standing next to me. And I thought, I'm her husband. I should let her know that I love her. And so I said, love to see that. It was my nurse. It was not my wife. And she said, what's that? And I said, oh, just everybody working together to make me feel better. And Megan wakes up and says, hey, if he says anything weird, he sleep talks. I'm like, you've just ruined it. I thought I'd saved it. It was pretty positive. And I told my wife what I had said when she left, and she goes, you said what? And she thought it was so funny. And I said, and then I thought I saved it and was quick on my feet and was like, oh, just everybody working to make me feel better. Thank y'all for doing that. Now the embarrassing part's over. And then Megan rises up from the bed and says, actually, if he says weird stuff, he does that sometimes. And so that was one of those moments where it was just like, you're mortified. And the next time she came in, I was just like, hi, thank you. Please leave. So embarrassing. And so there's funny things that happen all the time like that. But Gary, is there anything else you want to tell? Any other stories that come to mind?
There's one that did occur to me when Wayne was talking about running toward the slip and slide. Because people look at me and they say, hey, there's a runner right there, right?
Sure.
No, not at all. and they would be right.
Same.
And it just made me think of when was the last time I sprinted, right? Yeah. When's the last time I ran? I can tell you when it was. It was about 1.5 years ago. At our house, we have a little bit of land and we have a side-by-side, like a four-wheeler with 2 seats wide. And I'm a guy who likes economy. I like efficiency. I don't like wasted time. I don't like wasted effort. And so I'm riding the side-by-side and I pull up to a gate and I don't want to lock the emergency brake, turn everything off. I want to jump out, get the gate, jump back in, go. And so I pull the side-by-side up there, hits it, it stops. I say, okay, it'll sit here. I'll jump out and get the gate. So I jump out, and as I get to the gate, I see the side-by-side start to roll. I'm like, okay, I got time. It'll be all right. And so I get the chain. Chain takes me a little bit longer than normal. Get the chain unfastened from the gate, and now it's going. And I take off across the field after that side-by-side. And we live on a pretty busy road, people driving by. And I had 2 or 3 people say, I saw you sprinting across the field. And I mean, I ran as fast as I could possibly run. And I got there and I didn't even get in. I was just able to reach in because the emergency brake is up on like the dashboard beside the steering wheel. And I pull the thing and we're like, I'm like 20 feet from the fence. It's going to hit that fence and just go straight into a ditch. And I'm thinking about it. The whole time I'm doing, I'm like, if somebody's watching me, they're going to be.
And then sure enough.
And sure enough, people see it and tell it everywhere they can.
And that's the most embarrassing part because I've noticed this, and maybe you've noticed the same thing. I'm sure you've seen this in the camper. You ever been in a hotel room and you're just looking out? And maybe there's a shopping center across the way and you're watching people as they're going into the stores and coming out of it. And then you're thinking they have no clue that somebody's watching them right now. And you kind of feel creepy after that happens, like that guy in the store waving at me, and you start to go, maybe I should stop doing this. But then now every time I walk out of a place, I think, who could be looking at me right now that
who's watching me adjust my waistline?
You do something and you think, if anybody saw that. Yeah. And then I'm in a hotel room and I see things happen. I'm like, maybe people are seeing a lot more than I realize they can. That's the most embarrassing thing when someone says, I saw that.
I will say this: the older you get, you worry much less about those.
That's
things.
True. I can see that. But
you've been around me enough, so you know.
You do that at the camper though, where you maybe the windows are open and you see somebody, and you're like, man, that guy's picking his nose. There's no idea that I can see him.
Yeah, so, Gary, I got your next billboard for you too.
Okay.
Yeah, got to get Gary. He will run you down.
Well, Gary, thanks for being with us. Any other stories y'all want to? Anything else come to mind? Okay.
I'm good for a while.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Wayne had to be here. So, as we always say on this particular program, you can kick rocks, brother. I love you and appreciate you. But we do love each other. We get along pretty well. But this is a really fun show to do. I enjoy it. The Bible talks about there's a time to laugh, and it's good to sometimes just sit down and have the opportunity to swap some stories and talk about some of the funnier things that have happened. But lunch is calling our name.
Amen.
And so it's time for us to go. And so, Lord willing, we'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of Through Their Eyes. And then again next Thursday with Mark Teskey for Did That Really Happen? And my father-in-law, I've got some stories.
I bet he has some stories.
Well, we're going to mute his mic. Until next time.